Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're good. Hope you can hear me. I'm Jack Chew. This is Chewing It Over on Mondays and Thursdays at 12:30 till 1 o'clock. We chew over whatever is topical in MSK and especially where it intersects with culture. And this is a topic that certainly does. I feel like I've definitely missed a moment because I've been on holiday. I apologise for that, but we're going to make up for it with a cracking show today. I've been really looking forward to this. I think in part because I have been away and I've missed this, and just updating the titles then and stuff. It made me realise that it's been a few weeks since I've done a show. Kindly, Leanne was going to cover last week with Joe Elphiston, and we had some sort of problem with the tech, so she's going to come back with that episode soon. So Leanne Antoine will be back on your screen soon with Joe Elphiston, which will be great. But today we've got a show about women's football. Now I'm excited because I've been away for a bit, but I'm also really excited. These sorts of episodes that I love to bits because I know Joe Baxter and Becky Gray as people whose opinions in and around MSK and particularly say public health or fitness or rehab, I follow on social media. Really enjoyed their takes on all sorts of things over time. But they also happen to play football and fans of that sport, which is of course then taken off in recent months with the successes of the lionesses. Now, I missed a little bit, and we'll probably talk about this. I missed some of it because I've been away. It meant I wasn't behind the TV as much as I would be, but a big football fan, and certainly was definitely moved by the last World Cup, the last Women's World Cup, to following the successes of that. So it's been a really interesting thing and a big phenomenon, of course, to try and work out what's that going to mean. And that means for us as a sort of professional community in MSK, I think there's some consequences there. There's also these wider sort of participation-related variables and stuff, which is all very exciting. So I'm so pleased that they can both join me. I didn't realise this at all when I asked them to join, but they've apparently played together before, which is cool as well. So they know each other as well, which is great. So hopefully in a couple of clicks, I can bring them on air. But yeah, please do join in on the chat if you fancy joining us and giving your 2 pennies worth. That'd be brilliant. We always love it when you guys get involved. But hopefully, a couple of clicks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Super, brilliant. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Really pleased to be having this chat. Firstly, could you just quickly introduce yourselves to the listeners, both in terms of, say, professional cred, but also football cred? So give us your background there as well. Could you go first, Becky?
So I'm MSK physio up in the Northeast, but I grew up in Norfolk and played with Joe at Norwich City. So I kind of came into football when I was about 10, 11, and kind of played until I think it was about 14, got scouted by Norwich, played in the academy for a few years, and then ended up playing women's football for Norwich with Joe, which was probably some of my best footballing years in that team. So it's really nice to see Joe as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. And Joe, please, same question, contestant number 2.
Yeah, no worries. My name's Joe Baxter. I'm actually a trial, so I've not been clinical for the last year and a half, and I'm in Norwich, but from Macclesfield, which is where I am. For me, football is just always something I've done that since I can remember. I've got an older brother. Out in the garden was just like what we always did. Played for boys teams from being about 7 or 8, I think. They wouldn't let me. Well, there wasn't girls teams let me train with boys of my own age, which seems daft even at that young age. So I used to have to play with sort of real kind of littlies, which was a bit odd. And then my team kind of under 13 level, I think, under 14 level. So they started playing for Mactown. And then early 2000s is when the FA started their Girls Centre of Excellences. So that's the country to kind of scout from. So I joined Stockport County's Girls Centre of Excellence at the first year of that. Had a horror injury at 14. Lots of later, told to stop playing at 17, which I didn't really need. Played at uni, finished uni, and kind of thought I want to carry on playing. Years left, and then found Norwich City ladies and played with them, which is where I'm
Oh, fantastic. No, it's great. And it's such a funny coincidence for me that your paths have already crossed because, as I said, it was totally, in a way, independently. It's a small community, isn't it, in MSK, of course, online as well. But it was, I independently had noticed you both to be both players and fans of football in such a way that then for you to have played together is funny. But it's also probably relevant because it's a small community, isn't it, in a way? And so I suppose it's, for you to have been geographically close meant that you probably inevitably, if not played together, you might have played against each other if you were in the same neck of the woods, because that's just the tightness of that, which is obviously then we can talk about its growth. So can I go to? I feel like I want to give a fairly open first question, which is just each of your general thoughts on the last few months, particularly, and on the women's side of that sport in general. So again, Becky, if you would.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm still grieving that it's over. It kind of took over my life. I started watching the games, and to be honest with you, watching football, women's football 5-6 years ago is a very different game to what you watch now. The quality has improved exponentially. It's amazing. You've got these like proper thrilling games. So I pretty much watched all of them. And when I'm training for the Great North Run at the moment, so on my long runs I'd be listening to the Guardian did like a women's Euros podcast, and it was brilliant. So the bits that I didn't know about women's football I was learning, and then so I just feel completely energized by it, and it like Joe says, like growing up in the last 20 years as a girl who plays football has had loads of challenges. And remember, my dad has always been hugely supportive, and that's the reason I played football. But I remember times where I'd be in the shops with my dad when I was tiny in a football kit, and men would stare at me because it was a girl wearing a football kit. And yeah, you know, in terms of accessibility, I very nearly may not have ended up playing with Joe, because when I was 16, my dad and I went to Loughborough College because I wanted to be a footballer, and I was like, you know, this is my only chance actually to get out of Norfolk and maybe play for Loughborough. And in the end, I was 16 and I didn't want to go away from my parents. And we decided against it. So there's been so many challenges. There's been so many times I've been put down or kicked off of boys' football pitches when if maybe I'd had those opportunities that little girls are going to get now, maybe I would have been a better footballer. I maybe would have kind of got to better levels. So the tournament, I guess, Joe, I don't know if you feel this, but it's a bit bittersweet because I'm really excited that I might have children one day that play football and little girls that get those opportunities. But there's also a little side of me that grieves for people like us and for, you know, the Alex Scotts of the world who, you know, did amazing things, but it was never recognised. So I'm really excited about where women's football is now and how it might grow.
Yeah, brilliant. And so, yeah, Joe, your reflections on generally the tournament, but also including what Becky said there, because I can imagine that bit of sweetness is a funny experience.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I suppose similar to Becky, is night and day. It's phenomenal. This is the first tournament that I've really got into. Before I might have, like, you know, the gold medal match at the Olympics with women's football. I've never really followed it, and when it used to be on the telly, similar to what Becky said, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it wasn't much. I didn't enjoy watching it, and I felt bad as a girl and woman playing football that I didn't like watching. It felt slow. It just wasn't enjoyable. It was phenomenal. Like, these women are athletes. They're not, you know, just girls that were good at kicking the balls. They're just kind of complete athletes now, which is incredible. I know we've been, in terms of our developing that and strength and conditioning, and what other countries were, you know, have been for us. So it's incredible to see how much we've caught up now compared to when we lost in a final not all that long ago, and players in that team from age 13, 14. This is something that's been quite new for the England team. So yeah, like Becky said, definitely kind of be keeping an eye on the WSL going forward, and it will be something that I'll I'll keep you kind of look, and you like, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be a part of. But playing, I remember when I started at the Stockport Centre of Excellence, they said to us, who wants to play for England, age 13, 14? And a few people put their hands up, and I didn't. And I've been reflecting on that. Why did I not say I wanted to play for England? And it's only reflecting on it now, what that meant or what that looked like, or that football wasn't a job or a career, or I'm good at this, and I like being good at it, and I like beating boys, and I like, there was never, you couldn't visualise a career or a progression or what what playing for England actually looked like. And it wasn't until on the weekend I was like, if I would have gone, I could have had something to sort of aspire me to from that point of view. So myself, they're 3 and 6. I was trying to, my 6-year-old plays football, so I was like, watch this for her, watch this. Care, she wasn't fussed. And I think the great thing is, in a weird way, for her, it's normal. She plays football, she plays football. There's nothing bizarre about a bunch of women winning a cup. I said, no, Mummy's not in this one. Not quite.
I love that.
Quite fit for selection. It's amazing. No. She wasn't fussed because I think she sees it as quite normal, whereas I don't know what's gone before, which I suppose in a way is kind of a good thing, but I still made it watch it.
No, I think that's brilliant. I love that. I can see how, in a weird way, I think we're all going to go through a phase of needing to tell this next generation about how unusual it is to us. And obviously I say that as a big royal us, when of course I had all the privileges that come from playing football with that being expected of me. You're quite the opposite, just being that there'd be nothing. The only thing that would have been odd about that is if I didn't, and that is the massive difference, isn't it? Because we've got participation issues with regards to sex imbalance there anyway across the board, and there's various different things that can occur. But the girls play netball, the boys play football, possibly hockey, depending on. But that's certainly where I grew up. There wasn't really hockey, so it was that netball football split. And that then it's not just the extreme of then boys have got access and girls haven't. It's also that boys, again, it would be really strange to know. It's like all the boys are kicking a football about, barring a couple. But then there's an exclusion problem to some degree with that, where it becomes such a cultural norm, and that therefore makes it even bigger of a gulfing class than just sporting participation, because it's something that is just, especially depending on where you are geographically. But certainly sounds like where we grew up, that was the case. One of the things you've done is, I was worried about asking this question or framing it this way, until you've now given me sort of permission to, which is I was going to admit and risk cancellation, as I do on a weekly basis, for saying that I only recent years have I enjoyed women's football, despite being a massive football fan. And that includes the fact that I would go and watch a non-league game. It's not as if I was only a Premier League fan. And I'd watch me mates even play Sunday League. It was just a relevantly different game. And I never felt that way about tennis. And that's one of the things that I had to really scrutinise myself on, as to where were those biases coming from. And so to some degree, though, I do admit that in recent years, the tempo, just the touch is of a level now that makes it, for me, so much more enjoyable and so much easier for me to get behind it without me just seeming like I'm doing it because I'm bandwagoning. I felt guilty to admit to that, but it sounds like, unless I'm wrong, there's a version of that you've both experienced too. So I just wondered if I could just invite your reflections on that in the standard, and how guilty should I be feeling to feel that way?
I think I agree with Joe. Like I've definitely in the past watched women's football games and then got on my phone or turned the TV off. It's not really there. I'll admit there's been women's football games I've put on the TV even if I'm not watching, just because I'm like, that's another viewer that's going to the statistics. Even if I'm not watching it. Even some of the Euros games, I would be watching it on the TV and I'd open my boyfriend's laptop and I'd put it on so I'm like, that's another viewer that's watching it. because the more bums on seats, the more people that watch it, the more money that we're going to get, the more promotion, the better infrastructure at grassroots. And I don't think we should feel bad about that. Like, we should feel bad as women footballers that we've been mistreated in the last 20 years, and that there hasn't been infrastructure there, and schools haven't supported girls football to bring through quality players that bring that standard out. And it's really interesting. So I'm originally from North Walsham, and I played, my first ever football team was North Walsham Angels, and that's where Lauren Hemp is from. So my dad knows her dad. Lauren played in some of the teams below me before she went on to play for Norwich. And I went to a different school to Lauren, but I know the school that she went to, the PE teacher, who was a lady, didn't want the girls to play football. So in their PE lessons, Lauren Hemp didn't play football. My school, they did, and I was really lucky to do that. But, you know, so the fact the girls that are in that team today didn't get there because they had a really accepting, you know, they're not in that much of a different generation to us. It's just that they've worked their bum off and they've fought against every challenge. And, you know, if you get lucky like me, you get a supportive dad who tells you can be what you want to be, and you go for it. But the standard is only, I think, where it is at now because of the changes that are coming in. And that's why this Euros, even the Euros being in England, even the crowds, even if they didn't win, is so important, because it's going to build on the grassroots structure. And that's what I'm really excited about.
For sure. No, brilliant. Joe, your sort of thoughts on that, especially on my own guilt?
Anyone can feel bad about watching something that isn't entertaining, because that's what sports entertainment as well, and it just wasn't. So I think it needed to even professionalise and to get more viewers to watch, which obviously it's more money to support the game. So I don't. Yeah, I've always held my hand up and like watching women's football. Even when our games were recorded and we'd watch them back, I'd be like, God, that looks rubbish. Even yourself, you feel like it's all really fast and you're doing, you know, it's all amazing. Then you watch it back and go, oh God, is that actually how it felt to be doing it? So yeah, those improvements needed to happen, and to show what a small world Norfolk is. Yeah, Lauren Hemp was in the Centre of Excellence when I was physioing for that team. So yeah, I used to see her going off to the England camps. The difference geographically is insane. So she'd go off to the England camps to come back, and we'd see against all the others in her squad, in the England squad, you know, where she was sitting with the physios, and we'd get together for our kind of FA days, all the physios from all the different girls' centres. Input that Arsenal and Chelsea were getting, you know, they had full-time physios, strength and conditioning coaches with their girls, and there was just little old me for a match day, occasionally come to training to kind of help out, trying to do the work of, you know, squads we're getting. And the fact that she made it through that system to get to where she is absolutely.
I think those sorts of stories are the ones that are always going to be talked about as if it's like yesteryear, when it's all so recent and it's such a fast and active step change that obviously we want to embrace. I can't help but try and work out and just invite your opinions on why. I know that those things are multifaceted, but to some degree I find it to be a kind of classic condescending, patronising sort of, oh, let's protect the little girls type attitude that would keep people out of football that want to play it, when they're otherwise trying to encourage participation, but literally segregating it. Again, I mentioned netball, football, but it's that it seems unusual, and that does seem, you know, your story there, Becky, from from female PE teachers. It's just not the done thing. Like, for some reason, it's that therefore you've got all sorts of different social factors going on. But do you two both have a sort of either a primary thing that you consider to be a major contribution to why we've made that mistake historically, so that we can make sure we keep the foot on the gas of overturning it?
I think there's just huge variance. The school I went to, the high school that I went to, we had a girls' football team in every a PE teacher whose sons were football coaches. In fact, they coached a team I played for. So girls played football in PE from the beginning of high school. Curriculum, there was a girls' team in every year. So I think it does depend on the preference of the PE teacher and what they like to do, which, again, unless it's kind of those pockets of teachers that are really into it and will do it, and those ones that are a bit more blatant, like the girls do this and the boys do that. So without something more kind of national, and we'll get those kind of pockets. Same kind of geographically with the girls' centres was closed down, anecdotally, because teams didn't have to travel to East Anglia because them were around the London area. So yeah, I think geographical issues affect it. Can be just preferences of kind of teachers and what they like to teach and what they, rather than giving everybody kind of equal opportunities across the board.
Yeah. I think yeah, definitely agree, and I think it's really powerful now. We've got role models. Like, even I'm looking at like Chloe Kelly, who's younger than me, and I'm thinking she's my hero now because she scored. And like, you know, it's corny, but they say, you know, you can't be what you can't see. And those PE teachers couldn't see female footballers in the spotlight. Like Alex Scott being on Match of the Day, not even playing, but being a pundit and contributing. Like, that's changed the way that people see women in football without even seeing people play, because men have gone, that's a woman on there. She's talking sense. She's talking more sense than like, you know, Ian right now. So it when you see those role models, you see that change. And I think it's just, you know, how does any change come about in society? You know, there is that, unfortunately, there's a lot of men that still have that stereotypical way that we see women in society. But the way that we generally, as women, are fighting back against that, and a lot of men that are advocating for us, and just as women in society, how far we've come. The changes in football have kind of come along with them, just a lot later. And yeah, I think it's amazing that we have that kind of progressive society where, as women now as well, we feel able to stand up. Because I think the really sad thing is, you know, when me and Joe were playing football in Norwich, we accepted that was our position. It was our position to be at, you know, a good club, but not be watched by any supporters. And we weren't going to ever play for England, because there's, you know, for me, I was like, do I want to play for England or do I want a career? Well, I want a career. I want to have money. I want to look after a family. And being a footballer is never going to give me that. So I just gave up. So the more that we see those role models and see it happening, you know, PE teachers that maybe never played football, but now they've seen the Euros, hopefully they're inviting their children at school to come play football now. And that's why the England girls did what they did in the Euros this year, is to achieve that.
Yeah, no, that's so exciting to see. I think when we improve that access and improve the sort of social barriers and perceptions and stigma, and just reduce that level as much as we can, it'll be so interesting to then see those rates change, and inevitably that role model effect then dragging standards up and attention up, as well as the money that will be injected into the game naturally from exposure. I wondered though, is there a danger? Like, do you guys, because I feel like I know each of you enough to sort of know your style and standards and swagger when it comes to your opinions, that make me wonder whether or not you playing football as youths with the lads, or having to sort of trying to be on that pitch, is there something that might get lost with that, especially at that young age? I just wondered, is there anything that you look back on romantically of your youth there where that was useful? Because I've spoken to a few of my friends that I played with that were girls that were frustrated. It felt like there was a natural point in which it was annoying for us looking on that they couldn't then play. There weren't girls' teams locally to us that they could. But I remember at the time it seemed good for them. And having spoken to them, caught up with them recently on Facebook, they've sort of said, like, I'm glad that, especially until I was 10, that I played with you lot, because that was a good apprenticeship of a sort. So might we lose some of that, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think with Chloe Kelly, I think she's got quite a lot of older brothers, and she used to play cage football growing up. A lot of them, I think, obviously a lot different back then. You did grow up playing with boys. Oh, thanks.
Sorry, that's just an accident. That's just an accident. Sorry about that. I'll get rid of that. So that's thought you'd like that.
The kind of the idea was, play with boys for as long as you can, because it will kind of toughen you up a little bit. But I think as standards grow in general, so much of a thing. But yeah, my daughter plays for a football team that everyone says, oh, it's a boys team, but yeah, it is with all boys. And my mum's like, well, find a nice girls team for her. And I'm like, size, it's fine. Like, she can keep playing with, and I want her to feel like she is equal, and with girls that she's fine to play, to kind of carry on playing with boys. I grew up playing with boys, but I'm not, as Becky probably tell you, I'm not a physical player at all. I'm a get away from people rather than like that kind of roughing up side of things, as opposed to Becky, who was all about. So for me, it was more, I suppose, like kudos to playing against boys. When you do, it's kind of cool. But normally as standards go up and more girls, that will kind of probably, in women's football probably does have a slightly different style. That will probably be needing to have to play with the boys, I guess.
That's interesting. Your thoughts on that, Becky?
Yeah, it's interesting Joe says that, because I came into football 10, 11 straight into a girls team, so I actually never played with guys. But some
so you've not got a picture. I just assumed that you might have a picture like this.
No, I don't. I think I might have burnt them somewhere. No, but so I mean, when I started playing at 11 years old, there was a couple of girls that came and joined the team that had played with the boys. And at that time, they were head and shoulders above everyone else, because they'd had that ability to play regularly as well. But is that because they were playing against boys and they were tougher and faster because of it? Or was it because actually at that time, under 10s female girls team wasn't really a thing?
Yeah.
So they had to play somewhere. But generally that kind of, I think, evens out. If you're a girl and you work hard, I mean, as Joe said, so my whole thing is I look like I'm probably very nice and everyone knows me as a very nice person. On a pitch, I'm a slide tackler. My whole thing was battering into people, and in a fair way, of course. I'd win the tackle, but I was always the one that was up for the challenge. Love it, and on a wet, muddy pitch, could I put the slide tackle in? And that was playing against girls. That's all I ever knew. So,
can you give me a contemporary footballer or a historic footballer even that I might relate to, that's your game might be similar to, Becky? I really feel like I want to understand that. I'm sorry, I wouldn't know enough women's footballers in the pro game. But...
Oh no, I don't know.
I'm trying to work it out. Are we talking like Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira type aggression?
No, I'm not that level. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I was literally thinking Roy Keane, but have that sort of like wanting to that Keane had. But yeah, and you're a defender as well, aren't you? So you're more of a back. But yeah, that sort of player.
Brilliant. No, that makes a difference. That's interesting though, like we've said. It's such a funny, that, Becky, and I can also understand what you're meaning about how it's not a fair comparison to think that the girls that came through that had been playing with lads, it's that they've been playing. It's a confounder, isn't it, if we're trying to think vaguely scientifically about it. One of the things I have to ask you both, because we've not really gone into the fact that we all happen to be physios is coincidental as much really for this conversation so far, but if we can, I just wondered if I could invite you, each of your thoughts on whether or not you feel that there are some knock-on consequences with regards to how we need to think about it as MSK professionals, relevant differential injury rates for various different biopsychosocial reasons that we might need to be mindful of, and things that MSK professionals should be sort of raising their game and attention to at this point in time. I'll go to you first, Becky, if I can.
Yeah, gosh, that's a question, isn't it? So my second thought after we won the Euros was how amazing this is going to be for female physios who want to work in sport, because I love sport. I live and breathe it, and I always thought that I'd be a sport physio, but the reality of it was there was no investment in female physios that wanted to work in sporting, particularly in female football, and the men's game I just never really wanted to be a men's football physio. I wanted to be part of the women's game, and I hope that will really change. I suppose in terms of kind of the other thing is actually how having lots of children that are going to grow up being more active as a massive public health advocate is what impact are we going to see on those kids. And okay, we might see more sports injuries, but actually when those kids are 40, 50 years old and they are women that identify themselves as people that have played sport and are active, what kind of knock-on positive effect is that going to have on us as a society? And I hope that is the case. Joe can probably talk a bit more about managing the injuries, someone that's had them and treated those football injuries a lot more. But yeah, that's my kind of golden dream.
No, that's great. Thanks a lot. That's brilliant. I'm going to bring you in, Joe, of course, on the same question, but you've also, whilst answering that, you've got to cover this fan question that we've had from Martin. So
I can't see the question, but I'll answer the one.
It says, what's your kick up record?
533. Yeah, but you'd like that one in. It's in my revised stat about myself. Yeah, I used to work for the Girls Centre of Excellence. So they kind of treated boys and girls similar age to football injuries, and so it was a lot more fear with the girls returning to play after significant injuries. Just kind of a lot more fear, whereas the boys seemed a bit more kind of gung-ho, kind of straight into it. Just finding that adherence a little bit more difficult, which I could do, having lots of knee surgeries when I was younger and having lots of rehab, and I do it, and I look back and think, why did I do that? I wanted to get back to playing. Why did I have to be past a sense of control? Like, you want to feel like you're in control of your body and what's going on, and up anyway where you don't have that control over where you go and what you do and all that sort of back. It was that I wanted to have that sense of ownership over my rehab, and I didn't. I was told what I wanted to do, and I guess that's kind of probably shifted quite a lot on MSK, that whole collaborate, what the patient enjoys and what they want to be doing, and understanding the importance of it. I never understood what I was being asked to do. There was no internet then. I couldn't Google my injuries to figure out how long it took and why I needed to do any of this. I was just I feel all right. I just want to run around and do these silly weird exercises. So having better collaboration, giving young girls more ownership of their rehab and longer, and the benefits of that, and again seeing these female footballers as the athletes that they are, explaining the process a little bit better.
I think I'm excited about how it coincides with things like, it's one of the real upsides of CrossFit or generalized gym conditioning becoming sort of a sport in a way, is that people are demonstrating things that then the comparators are, the performance and the upper limits of female conditioning are being demonstrated quite obviously. And the The fact that then even it's got its obvious downsides, don't get me wrong, but I see there being some fitness upsides to female beauty standards changing. Fitness modelling rather than glamour modelling is I mean, it's still fraught with challenges, don't get me wrong, but to some degree, the muscular physique and therefore the risks that sometimes have. I mean, we still have it, of course, with patients that are concerned to do their rehab for thinking they're going to become muscle bound when realistically they want to rehab around a ligament repair. That shouldn't be on their mind as much. And that's a social pressure. It's not, I'm not calling them on that, but I'm just meaning that it's easier to have those conversations now when you think about what might be their pin-up compared to what was before. And so it's something that it's hopefully a useful thing for the conditioning element that is going to come along for the ride in women's football, with the fact that it also, with female MMA, boxing, the role model breadth that we have across it, especially in Britain, seems to be hopefully a helpful thing that I'm excited to watch, and hope we can get the right side of that without making some of the same mistakes. I love this comment that's come in. Slightly concerned about playing football against Becky next week now. Keen comparison. So yeah, we've got one someone that's quaking in the boots now, and rightly so by the sound of things. Becky, question here from Reese, which is a good one. How long do you think it'll take for women's teams outside the women's WSL, the Women's Soccer League? Is it what we're calling it soccer for? Super League. Oh, thank God for that. I thought it was soccer. I was like, Jesus. Calling it that away in this country, right? To improve their services. It seems they don't have any budget for medical staff S&C to help improve. Could the FA help with this going forward? Joe, can I bring you in on that one?
Yeah. I mean, it became fully Women's Super League, so they do have full medical staff. They do. It's been 4 years. I mean, some of the teams were doing this, had more foresight before then, and we're British. I have to say, Man City were quite good at bringing a lot of this stuff in. They had the foresight to what we need to do. So yeah, they do have all that. They are kind of fully medical staff and strength and conditioning, and facilities are improving. Team got absolutely slammed, or the setup got slammed in terms of their facilities being kind of awful pitches. And if it wasn't for the badge, I think most of the team kind of would have walked. But if you think, it had to be full-time professionals in the WSL, so it's going to take probably decades longer for every club to at that kind of like the top, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, where they are.
No, brilliant. Becky, your thoughts on the same thing then?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've come massively far in those top tier teams. What we need now is as a popularity to grow for the money and the services to kind of filter down. But I think really, I mean, that is something that we need, but really we just need solid grassroots foundations. Like when you're a 12-year-old girl or boy, you don't really need a load of medical stuff and stuff. If you're just playing Sunday league, you're happy with the orange slices and the freeze spray, and we just need people to get out there, enjoy playing, so that more girls play. The more girls that play, the more publicity there'll be, the more family members might start, I'll take her to a WSL game. Actually, I enjoyed it more than her. I really understood what's going on, and that's how it's going to grow, and it's going to gain momentum and keep growing. So there's definitely, like Joe said, there's more and more female kind of teams being paid kind of professional wages now. So it is something that's becoming more of a kind of viable career opportunity. But I think realistically, we've got gold tinted glasses and we're still really excited. This is something that's going to take, I agree, probably going to be 10, 15 years. I haven't got children yet, so hopefully in 10, 15 years when they're playing football, maybe they can play in one of these big teams. But yeah,
I thought she looked fresh compared to us, Joe. She's compared to us too. You can tell you don't, but yeah, no, you're right though. It's exciting, that opportunity. You don't yet, Becky, but we've got young kids, me and Joe, and it's an exciting thing to look at the future of what that might hold for it in terms of access and options, and trying to level some of that social pressure that obliges people by postcode or by sex to apply to do something or not do something. So that is really exciting time. Yeah, we've got gold tinted glasses, but long may that continue if it's going to have a positive net effect on what we can achieve. I'll wrap it up there. I'm deep into overtime just because I'm really enjoying chatting to you both. So sorry for keeping you. The thing that we want to try and do is to try and make sure that we link some of this work to some other content that we have on this sort of medical side. But we definitely want to just highlight that point that you've just made at the end there, Becky, about how if we're at risk of then thinking that an upside would be to have someone, you don't want to over medicalize women's sport all of a sudden just because we're all enthused. Now, that would actually be a downside. That would actually become at risk of being the condescension that we were talking about, where as if at some other level that women need more medical attention is only going to perpetuate some of those problems. So we need to make sure we do it appropriately and sensibly, but we try and also ride this wave to try and dream more participation in all sports, but especially in football, because that infrastructure still exists in the men's game. So let's try and make sure that then is used. So there's a lot of thinking going on with that. I've been since I've been obviously planning for this show and stuff, we're thinking about how we can integrate with some of the other great schemes that are going on with women's participation that hasn't been football specific, but has been definitely making great strides. So we're hoping to do more shows, and certainly really thank you both for taking lead on this and for all that you've done, not just in this on this topic and stuff, which is great today, but also for your comments and thoughts across the board in MSK. It's always been brilliant. So I'm really chuffed to have had two friendly faces to call upon to talk about this, which hopefully is the first of many sorts of things that we want to try and do to try and contribute positively. So thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Just let folk know where they can find out more on you, Twitter handles and the like. Becky first.
I think I'm Rebecca Gray P because I missed the T off and never fixed it. So Rebecca Gray P on Twitter or the Wellbeing Physio on Instagram.
Fantastic, thank you. And Joe?
To think then on Twitter. I don't really do much else, so yeah, just Twitter really.
Yeah, be warned. Baxter Physio on Twitter. She's very aggressive on the banter. It makes my eyes water most days. So just be warned on that. Joe's about as aggressive on Twitter as it sounds like Becky is on the football pitch. That's the way I like to put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you both. Really appreciate it, and all the best for it.
Great, thanks, Jack.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.